Yeah. Do you mark it with Cameron?
Yep.
Hi, Cameron. How are you?
Hello there. Can you see our picture or not?
We can't, but that's okay as well if you don't want to turn it on.
No, we should.
There's just a little button down in the left-hand corner where you can start your video.
Yeah.
Hey, I did to press that.
Oh, there we go. We're all set up.
Yay!
Yeah.
As we start this, ladies, it's really appreciated.
Yeah. So Cameron, my name's Molly. I'm O.R.C.'s Education Officer, and today Rebecca's going to be talking to you about some ocean facts and answering your questions and everything.
Ooh.
Rebecca, you'll be able to share your screen down below, wherever I'll just double check the settings that, yeah, all participants can share the screen. You can share that, whatever suits.
Okay, perfect. So let me get this doing what I want it to do. Right. There we go. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Good. That's a great start. Okay. So I actually go by Beck, but Rebecca's just the formal name that we go for. So Beck, if you need me, it's better, much more friendly, I think. So yeah, I'm a marine biologist. So this is me. So I'm in that picture. I don't have pink hair, but I have pink hair currently. So yeah. And that's me there diving. So one of the main things I think about being a marine biologist is super cool is how much ocean life you get to see. So I spend a lot of my time under the water, looking at all the cool things under there. Do you like going in the water?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once
Cool.
in Dubai, I was swimming on the beach and I was trying to catch a fish.
Wow, that's so cool. You've been to Dubai. That sounds amazing. Yeah, I'd love to go to Dubai. So a little bit about me. So that's me on the left there. That was when I graduated with my undergraduate degree, which I did in zoology, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a marine biologist. So I did zoology to just give myself a bit of like a broader scope about what I'm doing and to make sure that marine biology was what I wanted to do. I then, on the right, is when I graduated with my master's, which was last year, and that was in marine biology. So that was when I decided I was going to be a marine biologist. So when I knew I wanted to be a marine biologist was probably in my third year of my zoology degree. So I was a little bit older than probably some people when they realise. I'd always loved the water. I spent a lot of time, pretty much as your age, swimming around. We used to come to Cornwall all the time on holiday, and I used to love being in the water. But it wasn't until my third year of my degree when I visited this place, the Cape Eleuthera Institute, which is in the Bahamas, which was when I realised I wanted to be a marine biologist. And I got to do cool things. So there's a picture of me there tagging a sea turtle. So we did cool things where we would go and we'd catch juvenile sea turtles and we'd tag them so that we could track them and we'd measure them and look at the kind of turtles that they get over there in the Bahamas. And then also the picture over here is me with a nurse shark. So this is the similar kind of thing we were doing. So what we do, we go and we set out drum lines and we catch these sharks and then we tag them and then let them go, and it would help us see the kind of sharks that we have over in the Bahamas and also look at how they're growing as well. So that was really cool, and that was when I kind of realised that this was what I wanted to do. I loved being in the water and looking after these animals as well. So what I did next, oh, we're not going on, there we go. I actually went back to the Bahamas, which is where I did my master's. Do you know what a lionfish is?
Yeah.
Yeah, have you seen one of these guys before?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this here is a lionfish, and lionfish are pretty cool. And this is what I actually studied for my master's. So a lionfish, in case you're not quite sure, they're actually a venomous fish. So they have all these venomous spines. So they've got 13 across the top of them. They've got 1 on each of their pectoral fins, at the pelvic fins, sorry, at the bottom, and then 3 on their anal fins as well. So these guys are pretty feisty. They can cause a nasty sharp spike, which I actually did have in one of my fingers, and then they put their venom into you and they can make you feel all funky. But they're pretty cool fish. So these guys, they actually use these venoms mainly for defense. They don't actually use them to kind of hunt or use them for anything else. It is mainly just to kind of defend themselves from predators and things like that. And these guys are from the Indo-Pacific. So if you have a look at this map here, you see, do you know where Australia is on this map? This one that's kind of like in the middle. Yeah, so this is the Indo-Pacific here, which is where lionfish are actually from. So when I spent a bit of time in Australia, I got to see lots of these fish kind of all out in the reefs by themselves, which is where they should be. But the problem is we've got to study lionfish because they are actually invasive as well. So do you know what invasive means?
No.
Have a guess. Have a guess.
Does it mean? I don't know really.
That's all right. So invasive, basically, it's an animal being somewhere where it probably shouldn't be. So do you see squirrels often?
Yes.
Yeah, so here in the UK, we've got grey squirrels, and they're actually invasive because we were meant to have cute little red squirrels, but the grey squirrels were brought over quite a while ago, and they've actually kind of ruined the habitat and the life of red squirrels. And lionfish are doing similar kind of thing over in the Bahamas. So this is a picture here of the Bahamas where the lionfish are just all over the reef. So if you see, there's loads and loads there. And lionfish are really good at being an invasive species. They're really quick to eat their food. They can eat lots and lots of food. And unfortunately, because they don't belong there, other fish don't actually recognize them. So predators like sharks and things look at them and they don't think they're dinner because they're like, well, I've never seen one of you before. So it means that they're actually able to go over and basically just kind of destroy all the reefs over there and eat all of the fish that should be living there. And they actually found, some scientists found that they actually can decrease a reef population by about 90%, which is massive. So it means that all the reefs in the Bahamas have been overtaken by these fish. And even though they're super pretty, they shouldn't be there really. So got to do something about that, which is what I was looking at. So this is me in the Bahamas here. So on the left-hand side, that's me measuring a lionfish. That fish is actually alive. And what we did was we put them under an anesthetic using a thing called clove oil. And it meant that I was able to measure them out. But if you have a look, I'm wearing some pretty thick gloves. That's because of those spines that I told you about. Because if they got into my finger, which they did once, it really, really hurt. So I have to be super careful with those. And then here's just some pictures of me and some of the guys who I worked with looking after our lionfish. So we actually had, you see these big tanks here, we actually had 6 of those with about 15 fish in each tank, and I had to look after them for about 4.5 months, which is quite a while to look after some fish. It was a lot of cleaning, a lot of feeding. What we're doing here is we're actually feeding the lionfish. So what we do is we pop them in the white bucket, give them their dinner, and then pop them in the grey bucket once we're done, and then we'd have to go and catch all the other fish and do the similar kind of thing. So it was a long process. You think that's a lot of fish to try and feed, and you've got to make sure every single fish has had its food. So it's a really important part of being a marine biologist, to spend a lot of time pretty much looking after animals, cleaning out after animals, and being in a lab. And then what I wanted to focus on, have you ever seen a mangrove before?
I've seen it in one of documentaries.
Yeah, cool. So mangroves are these really cool plant things. They grow in kind of salty water, which is pretty cool because most plants need fresh water. But mangroves are probably one of the most important marine ecosystems we have. They are really important for looking after baby fish. If you've seen that picture there, there's lots and lots of little fish in there. Lots of animals will actually go into mangroves to breed. So even things like sharks will move into a mangrove and breed and lay their babies, and then they'll come out and let their babies grow up in the mangroves. So they're really important for lots of animals, and they're also really important for us as well, as mangroves sit on the edge of the land, and so they're really good at kind of stopping wave energy. So things like really big waves will actually be reduced because of the mangroves. So they're really important for us as well. And you think a lionfish who can eat 90% of fish on a reef, they're going to go in there and it's going to be like an all-you-can-eat buffet for that lionfish. He's going to just go in, he's just going to eat everything. Their mouths can actually get about 3 times the size of they usually are. So they're just going to go in and just like swoop it all up. So it's pretty bad. And people have started to actually see lionfish in mangroves, which isn't very good. So that's what I was looking at, lionfish in mangroves and how they can survive. And as I said, mangroves are they're a little bit different. So salt water in the sea is usually about 37 parts per thousand. In mangroves, they're very tidal. So the tide will come in and out. And so so the salinity of the water will change. So we had to look at how lionfish can adapt to living in different salinity water. So looking at, are they going to be able to survive? Is it going to cause them any issues? So that's what we were looking at. So if they can so not just survive, but also thrive in mangroves. So are they able to eat normally? Are they able to grow normally? Is it going to have a really big effect on their life, or are they actually going to be able to just go in and munch their way through every single fish that's living in there? So this is how we actually study that. So this looks really complex, and it is quite a complicated system. So this is called a respirometry machine. This is quite a basic one, because you can see it's built out of Tupperware boxes. So this is a bit of a makeshift respirometry machine. You can get really, really, really expensive ones, but this is one that we actually built ourselves, but it's still pretty cool. And this is a really cool thing to do. So you see one of these pictures over here, there's a lionfish sat in there. And what this does is it measures the amount of oxygen that that lionfish is using. So what we did is we got these tanks of water, and we filled them with different types of salinity, so similar to what they'd find on a reef versus what they'd find in a mangrove during, say, mid-tide, and what they'd find in a mangrove, say, during low tide, and to look at how a lionfish's oxygen consumption changes during that time. So that cool little coloured graph at the bottom there is all 8, so there was 8 lionfish in at a time, all 8 lionfish showing how their oxygen goes up and down. And the way you test that is you stop the water going in. So you'll turn the pumps off, and the fish will just be sat in the water completely still, allowing them to kind of take in the oxygen. And then once it gets a bit low, you flush the water back through again, and you can measure how much the oxygen goes up and down. We also fed the lionfish in there to see how their oxygen changes when they've been eating. So when we eat, we actually will use a bit more oxygen to try and digest it. And so that's what we did here. And hopefully this video will play. So you can see here, there's a little fish that we're trying to give to the lionfish, and he's going to try and get it eventually. So he'll swoop up, and you see he's pretty quick at grabbing it. And this is really important because it can show you how their kind of digestion and how the oxygen intake during digestion will change in those different salinities. And some of them are a bit fussy, some of them don't like to eat in there. It's a bit of a small space, and they're just like, I don't want to eat in this space. But most of them do eat in it, which is really important because it shows you good different things about what's happening with them. There you go. So he's about, okay, he took that one. So you see how they really swoop and grab. They're really quick. They're what you call ambush predators, because they'll just swoop and grab their fish, and they're really fast at doing it, which is pretty cool. So after I'd finished my research in the Bahamas, which took me quite a while, I was over there for about 6 months, and then I wrote up the papers of it for my master's. I then actually moved to Australia for a little while. I moved to this place. This is Perth, which is on the western side of Australia, which is a pretty big country, but it's right on the west side, and it is quite a pretty place. And over there, I started looking at coral. So I know you had some questions about coral, so hopefully this will cover your questions about coral that you had. So, yeah, go on.
In Dubai, I thought it was a skeleton of a fish, and it wasn't. It was actually a dried up piece of coral.
Oh,
and
really?
I found it, and it was just lying in the sand.
Yeah, nice. That's cool. Yeah, so coral can snap off sometimes, which isn't great for the coral, but it is a natural thing that does happen. Sometimes they just get a bit knocked, but obviously sometimes people knock them off as well. So do you know what coral is?
Yep.
Yeah? Do you want to tell me what you think coral is?
I think it's a plant, and it's very colourful, and also, well, it creates little fish cities.
Yeah, that's true. So actually, coral's actually an animal, which is pretty cool to think, but coral is an animal. So a coral is actually a living thing, and it's not a plant, which is pretty cool to think. But you're right, it does make cities, basically, for fish to live on. And they basically make these beautiful, colourful coral reefs, which you probably saw in Dubai. And the way that corals are so colourful is you see this thing here that says zooxanthellae, this weird word here. This is what makes corals so pretty. So this is a type of algae which lives with the coral. So they live in a thing called symbiosis, which is a pretty weird word. But symbiosis basically means that the coral and the algae both get something from living with each other. So what the coral gets is it gets the oxygen when the algae respires. When it photosynthesizes as it releases oxygen and the coral gets to take it in. And then the same difference for the other way around. So when the coral respires, it releases carbon dioxide, which then the zooxanthellae can take in, which is pretty cool. So they really help each other out, and they're really, really important for each other. Without one, the other one wouldn't survive, and vice versa, which is pretty cool. But that is what makes the coral so beautiful and colourful. And as you said, they're so important because they make things like cities for our fish. So lots of fish really need to live on coral reefs. They provide food, they provide shelter, they provide everything for them. So they are really important. As you can see from this picture, so many fish are so like really, really need coral reefs. But then the problem we've got is problems with coral. So have you heard of any of these things down here called like global warming, climate change?
Yeah.
Yeah, so global warming and climate change is a big, big problem for corals. And you might have even seen some of this when you were over in Dubai, coral getting kind of white coloured like this. And this is called coral bleaching, which isn't very good. And this happens when the water's maybe a bit too hot. So unfortunately, because our waters are getting warmer, our corals are starting to turn white. And the reason this happens is because of this. This is a really good picture here, which shows you why coral bleaching happens. So as I said, the coral and algae need each other to survive. They both provide different things for each other, but without one, the other one wouldn't survive. And what happens is, if stressed, the algae will just leave the coral. So if the temperature gets too high in the water, if the acid in the water gets too high, something happens that they just don't like, the algae will just leave the coral, and then it starts to turn white like this. So this is what coral bleaching is. So basically what you're seeing is just the bare skeleton of the coral without the colourful zooxanthellae algae on it anymore. And this is really bad because it means that it starts to die, and then it starts to get covered in bad algae. So there's good algae and there's bad algae. And what will happen when the coral gets bleached like this and is basically near dead, the algae will come and just take over, and then the coral's got no way of surviving anymore. And then the fish have got nowhere to live and nowhere to feed, and everything just kind of goes really bad, and it's really sad for everyone who needs coral reefs to live. And we need coral reefs as well. They're really important for us as well for many different things. So this is a really big problem that a lot of our corals are seeing. And so what I was doing in Australia was something similar. I was looking at the way climate change will affect coral. So this is one of the coral babies that I was looking after for a little while. He's quite a funky one, actually, a little bit more kind of animal looking than plant looking. And what we were looking at was how they grow. So looking at different effects of climate change and if corals are able to grow, and also if they're able to change the way they react to the water outside. So we set up something really cool like this. So this is called a flume tank. And what we had is all the corals lined up along, and then we had different levels of acid going through, because one of the things that also happens with climate change is ocean acidification, where the water starts to change in its kind of chemical makeup. And so we were looking at how the oxygen consumption in these corals would also change. And then also looking at if the insides of the coral change as well. So if they start to match their insides to the water outside. So this here is a very, very expensive machine. This is called a microsensor. And this little thing here that kind of looks like a needle, you have to put it through the polyp of the coral to get to the inside layer of the coral. And you can read what the pH, which is kind of the acidification of the water, is. And these things here cost about $2,000 each. And I broke 2 of them. Which wasn't very good. Safe to say my supervisors weren't too impressed with that one, but they are very, very temperamental and they are very, very fragile. And if you hit the wrong part of the coral, if you hit a rocky part, then it just snaps, which isn't very good. But we got there in the end doing insides, which they actually do, which is pretty cool. Also in Australia, I got to do other cool things. So I went swimming with whale sharks, which I will get onto in a minute, because I know one of your questions is about sharks and that you love sharks. So this is a whale shark here, and as you can see, it is pretty massive. Like, they are huge. And then I also went over to the Great Barrier Reef and swam on the corals and with some of the turtles over there, which was really, really cool as well. And the Great Barrier Reef is beautiful, but it's also seeing the problems of coral bleaching that I discussed a minute ago. So, did you know that the whale shark is the largest fish in the world? It's not a whale, it's actually a shark. So it's massive, like they are really big. And they can actually grow to about 5.5 to 10 meters, and that's the size of a bus. Like, that is huge. So the one I swam next to was about 8.5 meters. So she was pretty big, but yeah, they can get up to 10 meters. Some of them can even get up to about 15 meters, but that's kind of rare. Do you have a favorite shark, Cameron?
Yes, a
What's your
great
favourite?
white.
A great white shark. They are pretty cool. They are cool sharks. They're very scary though, with some very big teeth. Whereas whale sharks aren't quite as scary. Whale sharks don't eat nothing too scary, so they aren't quite as scary to swim with.
And also they're famous because there was a movie made about them.
There was a very good movie as well. A great movie. Yeah, exactly. A brilliant movie. So my favourite fact about sharks, did you know that they have a sixth sense? So sharks have this thing, called the ampullae of Lorenzini, which is a pretty funky thing. And it's all this, you see all these dots on this shark's nose here? So that's what these are. Do you want to have a guess what they're for?
Are they for like smelling out prey?
Oh, you're close. These are actually called like sensors. So if you have a look at this here, you'll see they're filled with some jelly and then they're attached to a nerve. And what they do is they help the shark focus on their prey during the final phase of attack by sensing the electric fields that the animal emits. So you think we've got 5 senses, these sharks have an extra sense to make them even better, which is probably why sharks such as the great white shark are very good predators. They know where their fish is, they know where their food is, and then they use this last sense just to basically be like, woof, and then they win because they have these amazing senses, which is pretty cool. I'd love to be able to kind of detect electric fields around me, it'd be really cool. Okay, so the most interesting animal I've ever seen, because you asked this for me as well, was one of these guys. Do you know what this is here?
Cuttlefish.
The cuttlefish, yeah. So cuttlefish are super cool. I think they just look like aliens. Like, it was the weirdest thing I have ever seen. We were diving on the Great Barrier Reef, and I just saw this thing kind of like floating by me, and then it quickly changed colour and then just darted away. And then we chased after it because I was like, I need to see what this is. And then it was just sat on the bottom of the water, and it was just so cool. And they just do this weird like thing. If you look some videos on YouTube, there's some really cool ones of cuttlefish just kind of like moving, kind of basically like aliens in the water. So these guys are quite clever, and they're one of the only animals, part of the invertebrates, so without a backbone, that can learn and remember, which is pretty cool because most animals without a backbone aren't that clever. And they're completely colourblind, so they don't know what colours are, but they can change their colour and shape so quickly to help them camouflage and communicate. So that's pretty crazy that they're able to do that, even without being able to see the colours themselves. And cuttlefish are part of the mollusk family. So this is a group of marine animals including clams, mussels and oysters, and this is where seashells come from. So one of the questions you asked was, how are seashells formed? So shells are excreted from the outer surface of an animal called the mantle, and then they're made up of mostly calcium carbonate. Do you remember I spoke about ocean acidification with the corals and what we were looking at? Well, ocean acidification can actually affect mollusks and shells the exact same as coral because they're made up of the same thing, calcium carbonate. So even the things we're doing to ocean acidification and to climate change could actually affect shells as well. So we might start to see differences in shells because of those problems too, which is pretty cool as well. And so after I'd finished over in Australia, I actually moved back to Cornwall. So I've lived in Cornwall now for a little while. I actually studied down here, and then I moved back here after I left Australia, pretty much almost a year ago now. And I actually came and I started working with seals. So seals are super cute. And I'm assuming you've probably seen a seal before. Yeah. So there are quite a few species of seal. You've got what, sorry?
I've got something even quite cuter than a seal in my house.
What's that? What do you have?
It's my really lazy cat, Dylan.
Oh, cute. What colour's your cat?
He's brown.
Brown, cute. My parents have 3 cats, and I have a house bunny who's currently asleep in the corner. He ran over a minute ago and then ran away, so yeah. So yeah, cats actually kind of look like common seals. Who's this pit seal on the left here? So they've got this really rounded head, a bit of a shorter nose, and they are more cat-like. Whereas grey seals, which is the one on the right, look a lot more dog-like. They're more like dogs, and they have much more kind of blotches rather than patterns. And there are actually about 33 species of seal in the whole world. So that includes seals and sea lions and walruses. But we actually have these 2 species who live in the UK all year round. And these are the species of seals that I work with. So seals have quite a few threats, unfortunately. One of the main ones is plastic. So plastic is a huge problem for many, many, many animals. I know lots of schools are now teaching about the threats of plastic to animals, and seals unfortunately do struggle the same. So this was a picture that was on the news it was only a couple of months ago actually. This was on the news, and you can see this seal's got his neck caught in a big piece of plastic, which is really, really bad. It's not very good for them. Another problem for seals is unfortunately us as people. So we have a really bad habit of seeing something cute that's by itself and really worrying, and we'll start to go towards it and we'll start to worry and think, oh, it's in distress, it needs our help. But what's probably happened is mum's maybe just gone off to get herself some lunch, and then she's going to be back in a minute, and we start to think that maybe that seal needs our help. And the main problem is the minute we approach a seal pup too soon, the mum's going to go and she's never going to come back. And they have a really strong scent relationship. So if we get too close, we actually disrupt that, and the mum's not going to know which pup's hers, and then she's going to unfortunately abandon it, and then it's going to end up looking like this seal pup here, which looks really, really sad and kind of thin. And that's when we actually have to step in at the seal sanctuary. So I work at the Cornish Seal Sanctuary, which has been open since 1958. So that's quite a while ago. So it's been open for a very long time. It actually opened over in one part of Cornwall and moved. But it was opened just by a man called Ken Jones, who wasn't a scientist. He wasn't anything special. He was actually an engineer, and he just loved seals. So he decided to open a seal sanctuary to help look after the seals who have been abandoned or injured over in the Cornish coast. So what we do is we rescue sick and injured seal pups from Cornwall. So we rescue about 60 to 90 seal pups per year. So that's quite a lot of seal pups who come in. And it's seals who have maybe been injured by boats, plastic, maybe they've been abandoned, or maybe they've just got themselves into a bit of a tough time. So we'll only bring seal pups in who actually need our help. We're not just going to bring them in because we feel like it. We really need to make sure that they need our help. The way we do that is by watching them for about 4 hours to make sure that mum's not going to come back, because the last thing we want to do is take pup away if mum's going to come back. And what we do is we rehabilitate and release the seals. So here's some pictures of our seal pups being released. So once they're back to a good healthy weight, once anything that was wrong with them, we get a lot of seal pups with infections and eye infections and all sorts of things. So once that's all kind of sorted out and they're feeling better and they're healthy and they're at a good weight, usually about 35 kilos, we actually go out and we release the seals. So we'll drive onto the beach, we'll let the seals out, and then off they go to the ocean to just get on with their lives, and hopefully they won't have to come back to us, which is really exciting. And it's a really nice thing to see as well, because obviously the best place for that seal to be is out in the water by itself. But then we also have to provide home to seals who need permanent or ongoing care. So we sometimes get seal pups in. So this here is a picture of Ray. Ray's been with us now for 18 years. He was rescued as a seal pup, and he had quite a bad injury to his head. He's actually completely blind, which is why his eyes look a bit funky, and he also suffers with brain damage, which meant that he couldn't be released. So he lives at the Cornish Seal Sanctuary all year round. He's never going to be released because he probably wouldn't survive out in the wild. So seals who come in and maybe they're too sick, or if they come from other centres who don't have space for them, they'll live with us all year round. So we've got quite a few permanent residents who live there all year round, but the main focus is to obviously release seals who can go back to the wild, because that's where they should be. So I do a lot of work in our education department. So I run all of our workshops with our schools. I run all of our talks that we do for our guests. And then obviously sometimes run some of the experiences and guest interactions. But at the moment, obviously we've got quite a few people who are still there looking after our animals at the moment, because obviously they still need looking after. Okay. Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Yep, come on.
One is, have you ever seen a sea cow?
A sea cow. So I have actually seen a sea cow. So do you mean like a manatee?
Yeah.
I have actually seen a manatee. I wish I got a photo for you. So when I was living in the Bahamas, we used to have a manatee who used to just come and visit us at the boatyard. There was no real reason why she was there. She used to just swim on up, she'd have a little drink and then she'd swim away. And some days she'd stay there for like 3 or 4 days, and she was huge. And I got to actually swim with her. So I used to go out in the little boatyard with her and have a little swim next to her, and she'd just swim by the side of me. They're very funny little things, and you can see why they're called sea cows, because they do kind of look like cows under the water.
Do you have like any of the little submersibles?
So I've never used a submersible, but if you, once we're done, have a look and search CEI Bahamas, they actually got one of the really, really famous submersibles over there pretty much about 6 months after I left, and it was one of those massive ones that can go really, really, really deep. And one of the other things we worked with was a underwater camera, which actually went down to about 10,000 feet, which is pretty deep. But I've never used a submersible, but I would love to. They seem so cool.
What's your favourite shark fact?
My favourite shark fact is the one about their electroreceptor sensors, where they have on their snout, which means they can sense electric fields around them. What's your favourite shark fact?
Mine is that. Oh, I don't have a favourite.
Why do you love sharks so much? Let's go that way instead.
It's just because they've been around for so long.
Yeah.
And my friend Alfie and me really like to make them up in our heads.
Yeah.
Because I do ask him, make up your own shark, and he does it with me, and we tell each other what it can do.
Oh, cool. What kind of sharks do you make up?
So I've made one with so it's like a megalodon, but it has like about 100 times more the teeth.
Right.
And on its tail, it say if something like a normal megalodon was trying to attack it in the tail to stop it from swimming away, it has like an electric pulse in the tail, so once even the nose gets near to it and electrifies it, and then the shark would swim away. That's
pretty cool. I don't think I'd want to see that though. I think I'd be pretty scared if I saw one of those out in the water. I think it'd be pretty terrifying.
And Alfie's one, I think it could actually oh no, this would be so silly. It can actually breathe lava.
It can breathe lava. Wow.
And my other fact about the one that I made up is it's got like a cuttlefish thing, so it can turn invisible instead of just go underwater, go really deep and then come back up.
Yeah, nice.
It can turn invisible.
Turn invisible. That'd be a pretty cool sense as well. I mean, it is pretty cool seeing a cuttlefish do it. So imagine a megalodon doing it. That would be even more impressive.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions?
No, you should do it. Do sharks too?
See, I got this question, and I don't think they do. I had a little look to see if I could find the answer, and I don't think they do. I think because, so do you know how sharks stay kind of buoyant under the water? How do they stop themselves going up and down? Do you know how they do that?
Nope.
They have this thing called an air lung, which helps them kind of move up and down. So they pump gas into it. So I think they'd be using all their gas in their air lung rather than out the other way.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, but do you have a favourite whale?
Do I have a favourite whale? That's a good question. Favourite whale? I really like minke whales. So I don't know if you've ever seen a minke whale. And I think the reason I like minke whales is because when I was quite little, we went out on a boat down here in Cornwall. I can't have been much older than you were. And I saw a minke whale, and that was one of the first kind of whales that I saw out in the wild by myself. Like obviously not on TV. So I think a minke whale, they're not that special. They don't do anything too spectacular. They're not really that big. I think just because it was the first whale that I'd ever seen, not on the TV, and that was kind of one of the animals that I saw and was like, oh, how cool would it be to spend all my time looking at whales? So probably a minke whale. Do you have a favourite whale?
Yep, mine is a sperm whale.
Oh, sperm whales are also pretty cool. They've got funky looking heads.
And I really would like to see Moby Dick.
Yeah.
I've seen the terrible new one. It's really bad.
Oh dear. Right, well, that's some feedback for the producers of that. Right. Okay. Have any other questions?
No,
No?
not really.
Not really?
No.
Okay. Well, what do we need to say to the ladies?
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope you learned something and I hope you enjoyed yourself.
I did.
What was your favourite bit?
My favourite bit was all of it.
That's a good
Wow.
review.
Good. That's really good feedback. Really
Good feedback. I'm happy with that.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. Cameron, thank you so much for all your questions. And Beck, thank you so much for the PowerPoint. It was amazing. Super, super interesting.
No, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something that you can take away and you can go and amaze all your friends with all your new facts.
I know, it's pretty cool. Is it possible to get a copy of that PowerPoint? So
Yeah, of course.
Because we've spoken, sorry, just seeing what's happening. We've spoken to some of his other friends in regards to this today, and it's about sort of including that in his work diary for school.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
That would be absolutely amazing. And just a massive thank you to you both. It's an absolutely brilliant thing that you're doing here, and we've looked forward to it for a few weeks, haven't we? Thinking of all those questions.
Guys, thank you so much for participating. Honestly, we wouldn't be able to do it without you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and if you need any feedback or we can put a post anywhere to sort of help promote the work that you're doing, please do let us know.
I will, of course. Thank you so much for the offer.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much,
All
guys.
right.
See you.
All right, ladies, take care and thank you.
Thank you again, guys. Bye, Cameron. Bye.
Bye. Bye.